This digital presentation aims to discuss the reality of dyslexic children in Australian contemporary education systems today. We will make fundamental linkages to key policies and legislations and provide guidance in terms of inclusive pedagogical approaches and environmental influences for dyslexic children. The reality is, as humans, we are surrounded by diverse language and literature across the world. Therefore, children acquire language well before they begin to make connections to literacy. For example, unborn babies can recognise their parents' voices shortly after birth without seeing them, or when young children can make connections to language without recognising the words. Therefore, as research states in the Scarborough's Reading Rope, children must develop their language skills in order for children to develop their literacy skills and knowledge. However, language acquisition does not always come naturally for some and can impact tremendously on their literacy development, academic and emotional outcomes. As a result, many children with dyslexia face difficulties learning to read in mainstream classrooms. According to the Australian Dyslexic Foundation, 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. Dyslexia is a neurological learning disorder and can present in different severities. Children who have dyslexia often find it challenging to read accurately and fluently due to poor phonological awareness and phonic recognition and decoding skills, which are all associated with the phonological components of language. On the other hand, dyslexic students struggle with self-confidence and well-being due to the humiliation of not being able to read as or at the same rate as their peers. Therefore, the Disability Discrimination Act 1992 and the Disability Standards for Education 2005 recognise dyslexia as a learning disorder. However, dyslexic characteristics also contribute to their outstanding strengths, which include problem solving, creativity, observations, high empathic nature, brilliant big picture thinkers, making connections and reasoning, and finally, being great three-dimensional thinkers. As a result, dyslexic students require an evidence-based literacy approach that allows students to engage and be motivated to learn. This literacy approach is best supported by an explicit, structured literacy method such as the Orton-Gillingham approach, which is linked to the Salamanca Statement 1994 and the ethical responsibilities of teachers. Simply put, the Salamanca Statement declares that everyone's characteristics and learning needs should and have the right to be aligned with the educational institution's structure, political and social principles and practices.
On the other hand, as pre-service teachers, we must understand and acknowledge the Code of Conduct of Ethical Responsibilities to ensure that we implement teaching standards such as professional knowledge and practice, along with professional engagement. As the statistic mentioned earlier, it is highly likely that throughout our professional teaching careers, we will be faced with supporting dyslexic children in our classroom. As a result, the reality is all children, regardless of their learning needs, should be taught in an authentic, meaningful way that suits their learning needs to be able to become effective readers so that they can engage and integrate with the world around us.
Furthermore, Australian schools can align their education with a multitude of curricula, such as the Australian Curriculum, Steiner, Montessori, and the International Baccalaureate. Regardless of the curriculum that educational institutions implement, education today can be viewed as a cookie-cutter approach, meaning one size fits all. This approach significantly affects dyslexic students in a variety of ways. Firstly, students' learning is assessed through a standardised testing regime, such as the National Assessment Program Literacy and Numeracy, which is well known as NAPLAN. Therefore, this type of assessment does not consider each child's unique characteristics and learning needs, and consequently provide a false result of the student's overall knowledge and skills. In fact, this approach excludes differentiating teaching practices when teachers scaffold learning to their students. Teachers scaffold learning so that students' needs are accommodated with reasonable adjustments. On the other hand, another element of the cookie-cutter approach is the student's well-being, which must become imperative for educational leaders and teachers to develop the whole child, not just the academic outcomes. Especially for dyslexic or struggling readers, because these students display a lower self-esteem and confidence and affect their academic outcomes. The well-being of each student is crucial to their engagement in learning, alongside their peers through appropriate adjustments and scaffolded teaching strategies to ensure they have the ability to become resilient long-life learners. It should be noted that all children have the right to adequate education regardless of their needs and abilities, which connects to the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child. Secondly, a whole language approach is implemented in contemporary classrooms, yet dyslexic students struggle with this approach regarding developing language and literature skills and knowledge. The Australian curriculum therefore supports the definition of disability, which can be viewed in the meeting of the needs of students with disability, and defines disability as a disorder or malfunction that causes students with disabilities to learn differently from their peers. Therefore, our idea is to bridge this learning gap for dyslexic students is by planning and implementing an Orton-Gillingham approach to various English subjects, such as reading and spelling, in our classrooms, along with establishing individual education plans to ensure students' engagement, participation and well-being occurs through the learning process, whilst working towards meeting their individualised education goals. To support teachers' code of conduct of ethics and practices, we suggest that educational institutions implement an Orton-Gillingham approach and assistive technologies such as text-to-talk or note-taking in their classrooms, representing a multisensory language-based with flexible instructions. We are enabling teachers to break apart the critical elements in teaching literacy, including phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, all associated with SCAR-based reading rope and the science of reading.